Coming to you from Studio HQ, welcome back to another episode of Sunder Katz. Why Sunder? Because we talk about something different. And today's episode is Cinebook. And why cats is because we're the coolest cats in town. Speaking of cool cats, I am Dodgy in the mix, mixing it up with Paul Rabbit Gomez. What's happening, Rabbit?
What's going on, people? Welcome back. It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, it definitely is. And just before we talk about the amazing books at Cinebook, let me shout out our sponsor. Um, Binding Comic Book Day is coming out October 1st, calling on all creators and comic book shops. If you're a creator like Rabbit right here, reach out to your local comic book store, make an event, celebrate local creators. It's Artist Alley in your LCS. And Rabbit, I had to bring it up. Just,
Awesome.
just spruce it out, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Bushibu Circus issue 2 is coming to Kickstarter on July 30th, and it's going to have not one, not two, but three early bird specials. So make sure you're getting in there for those because they're going to be amazing. All the tiers are looking great, and covers are coming in daily.
Woohoo! Yes, July 30th. Check it out with my main man, Rabbit. I'm really excited for you, bro. I hope it all works out really, really well for you. But until that launch happens and finishes, we're going to be sprucing out on all our indie creator shows. So do yourself a favor and check it out. Um, so we're going to be talking about our next publisher. And again, just like Humanoids, Cinebook publish titles from Europe and bring it out into the English audience, English speaking audience, for that matter. And just checking out their website, you did have a look at it as well, Rabbit. You mentioned off show. What did you think of the website of Cinebook?
I thought it was a great website. It really was easy to maneuver, and it had so many categories that you could look through and just find what you're
Mhm.
looking for. They had tons and tons of great titles to look through, and there were some comics that even piqued my interest. Definitely that I might look at later.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the search feature because once you
Yeah.
start typing in the name of the book or the title, it just shows up a list of the matches of the words or the letters that you use. So quick, easy access. And I did see a few Lucky Luke books in there, and that's a title or a cartoon I watched when I was a kid. I had no idea it was French, so that's pretty cool.
Right, and they had so many things to choose from, and the categories that it just was really a really good website.
Yeah, I really enjoy the fact that we can see these books that are published in different languages brought out to the English speaking audience so we can enjoy them as well and see what the buzz is all about. So kudos to you, Cinebook. And, and the thing with Cinebook, some of the titles that we picked up today, they were relatively different to the kind of books that you and I would be accustomed to, Rabbit. And and we will admit, we did have some challenges with reading because some of the books are very, very wordy and
Yes.
they really do ship the narrative to what direction they're going. It's almost like going through a phase of like go left and right and which way up, down the stairs. The books really told us that panel by panel, which is great in some ways, but again, we're just not really all that used to it. And did you find the same thing, Rabbit?
I did. Whenever you actually have to point out the direction where the panels are going, that's usually not a good thing. But again, the story kind of helped you out and laid you that format to go with. So that wasn't exactly a bad thing as well. It
Ah,
really was a complex thing, with the reading and the artwork, but it worked together in some cases.
yeah, definitely. And I think, and the fact is that we read volumes also meant they were a bit lengthy, which is totally fine, not an issue. But when you're trying to read four of them in a week for a show, it does realize challenges. But in some cases, some of the storytelling is so darn good that there's a justification for the amount of reading. But man, like this book here, I saw and I was like, it kind of reminded me of Asterix and or even Tintin, and that is Papyrus, Ramses' Revenge by uh, Der Gieter. So it sounds German, but I believe the gentleman is is Belgian, and um, Papyrus is about a young peasant. He's from Egypt, and I really love the fact that all the characters we've seen in this book are primarily Egyptian. So we don't really have any innuendos or anything that kind of redeemed racist, which I really liked. And sometimes it was just a book of the time that did come across that way. I didn't see any of that in this, so it was very pleasant. And the fact is that some of the storytelling was kind of funny as well, with Papyrus and his girlfriend or his
Mhm.
princess that they're working together. I don't know if they are boyfriend and girlfriend, but really good friends.
That
I
that
think
that
DT
back and
Cherry.
forth, that back and forth that they had was definitely unique. It reminded me of watching that show Cheers. Whenever you had Diane and the bartender, that's
Yeah,
that's kind of the back and forth that those two characters had, and I enjoyed it immensely. I really did.
yeah, you're so right with that. Because we needed that a little bit of banter as
Mhm.
well, and the fact is that he did amazing things and she didn't see it, and she mistaken him for being lazy.
Right.
I really dug that. And look, one thing I did like about it too, Rabbit, before I, get your hypnosis, but there was with his friend Himotep who had one leg. I thought that was so different. Having a friend who only has one leg and just being one of the boys. I thought that was great for its time, and I'm not sure when this book was initially released in Belgium, but it seemed like it was aged a little
Mhm.
bit because I think the creator is in his late 80s, so the book must have been released maybe 20, 30 years ago. Um, but overall, I thought it was a very busy book, had a lot of storytelling, and it was almost like a smart kids book. Um, but Robert, what did you think of Papyrus Ramsey's Revenge?
Well, first and foremost, I got to say that this was probably my second favorite book of the week out of all the ones that we read. I think that it was a little long, but whenever I read it, it felt like there were like single issues that were combined together, and it had so many different like stories within a story kind of thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing that I loved about it was the character development with these three characters, especially, and the way they maneuvered and bantered back and forth, and the way they grew with each other. That was really, I think, the strongest point of this book, and it led well to the story as well. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it is a bit of a history book, and I'm not sure how much research the Gieter actually did, but it seemed relatively accurate. And I loved how we had scenes where the giant sphinx came to life,
Right.
and oh man, part of the history buff in me was like salivating. It was so good, and I actually had a good time. I wouldn't say I laughed out loud, but I did smile when I was reading this. I got to
Right.
say,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and like you had pointed out with the banter in between the characters, it really was a little humorous of an adventure. And whenever I said that it felt like it was a few books put together, you had like these different challenges or different enemies that came across, and it was
Mhm.
like one after the other that kind of got put well into place, and it just all fit.
Yeah, and just to give credit to his art, and I mean, his art are right. It says one person doing this. The backgrounds are absolutely gorgeous.
Hmm.
I'm going to get into a splash page shortly, um, and it has that Kirby-esque feel to it, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. But just in the meantime, we see the different elements of darkness, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. And I don't know if you notice a bit, Rabbit, but in each page, it's got the Gita's actual autograph at the bottom right hand corner. Have you noticed that?
I did notice that, and you're right about the art. It did look beautifully placed for the story that it was told, especially the fight scenes. I mean, because
Yeah.
whenever it had those monsters coming out, it was just like I said, it had different villains in it. It felt like it was different issues where they were fighting those different. either challenges or monsters or whatnot.
Yeah, and yeah, I just appreciate the realistic feel to it as well. Like we see here with the hippopotamuses, like they look very very detailed. They look like hippos. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah, the art is just applaudable. But this
Yeah.
was the splash page I was getting to. You imagine opening and seeing this? Oh my goodness! And that's what I said. It has that Kirby-esque feel to it because Jack Kirby has done splash pages like this, where we see the character in the foreground and this humongous background here of the four Sphinx. And man, I
And,
loved it.
and it's so detailed, and the way the picture just looks so realistic of the
Yeah,
Sphinx, and then you got the characters down here kind of in awe of it. It really was, I mean, an amazing page to see.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like it does. What I mentioned before, it has that Tintin and Asterix feel to it. It's just how cartoony the characters look, but at the same time, they look awfully realistic in
Right.
many ways. But I kind of like comic books like this at times where the characters don't need to look absolute human in order to look great. Like, and they do. They all look great in their own, and they're drawn in that special way. Yeah, and I believe there's like a number of volumes. I don't know the exact number, but how did you feel, Rabbit? Having children yourself, do you think this will be a book good enough for kids to read?
Well, I definitely would give it to them. I'm not sure if they could have that attention span for it, but
Yeah,
if they did, it definitely would be an interesting, to sit down and talk to them about it afterwards kind of book.
yeah, no, 100%, 100%. But yeah, no, definitely. For those of you who like history and like adventures, Papyrus would be the book for you. And apparently, this was an animated series in the late 90s.
Oh wow.
Never seen it, but yeah. If anyone is watching or listening and on YouTube, just leave in the comment in the comments field below and tell us if you've actually watched this animated series. It'd be interesting to know. Yeah, I just love it has that Indiana Jones kind of feel to it as well.
Yeah.
In some of the inside the pyramid stages. Yeah, that's great. We're going to be talking about the next book now, and this one was quite an interesting one. And this is actually called Akkad, and the author's name is Clarke. So Clarke is the author, and just going by one name, which is pretty cool. It's basically set out in the near future. These five teenagers have had experiments placed on them, and from what I've read in this, and some of the experiments are not overly pleasant. But I don't know about you, Rab. I'll ask your opinion after. But I believe this will be great as a TV series or movie. Better suited than a comic book, but not saying the comic book is bad. It's actually very very good. Just a lot of character development, jumping to and fro between scenes. Don't have a problem with that, but again, just give me a few more cups of coffee, and I'll really enjoy this. No, but overall, it's a science fiction book with these giant scarabs. Don't call them that. They don't like being called scarabs. These gigantic insects that are invading the world, and then the way they invade is through like teleportation or something like that, or maybe I don't know. They just come through like a little loophole, and they just come out of nowhere. And I thought that's a pretty great way of showing how unpredictable these monsters are. And I'm not sure if these are killable, but we'll soon know
Right.
once I read the book further. But Rabbit, what did you think of Akkad?
Now, this actually was my favorite book of the
Your
week.
favorite?
Having said that, I agree with you wholeheartedly that it would make more better of a movie or a TV show. But what I loved about it is the style of writing and that character development
Mhm.
that you talked about, and the way that it laid everything out for you and just put it in place. To me, the way the story arc went, the part that we read, of course, it really had progressed to everything in such a well placed manner that at first I didn't feel like I knew what was going on, but halfway through, I want to say page 5 or so, everything started dropping into place, and you have these characters that you're introducing and these powers that they have, and the feel of it just
Yeah.
felt like it was modern but sci-fi at the same time. I'm not a big sci-fi person myself, but I felt myself being pulled into it, and that's why this was my favorite of the week.
Yeah. I just looking at this page here because this blew my mind. Not too many times we'll see a pathway to something in the background like this, and
Right.
having the black around the border. I thought that was a fantastic panel.
It was.
Yeah.
Being able to see that eye right there with those people walking towards it, it just made you have that feel of the depth of it.
Mm-hmm. And the size too. Yeah. Yeah, and also the character development we talked about earlier. Yeah, it is a slow burn, but there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that we just need to stick around and read further in order to get a better idea of what's going on around us. But I wouldn't say I'm the biggest sci-fi fan, but I did really enjoy it, and I love some of the, like the hazy CCTV footage as well. I thought that's a great touch when the doctor is trying to just analyze the 5 of the teenagers that are going to be, put in the firing line of these scarabs. Don't call them scarabs. I thought that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it definitely was, especially that was one of the unique things I liked about it. How it switched from the two people talking at the very beginning on those first few pages into where the kids kind of were experimented on, and then going back to where they were fighting the monsters and whatnot. It really, like I said, kind of just laid you that pace to you, and it told you what was going on and what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the teenagers are and also struggling with their mental health as well, or physical health. There are some elements of depression in there.
Yeah.
I thought that was a real nice touch because obviously not everyone reacts the same way. Some of the teenagers felt okay, some of them didn't, and I did like the fact that the doctor was trying to mend them to
Right.
become fit enough to fight these monsters, but again, it kind of almost asks the question, like, could we have not just got physically trained soldiers and experimented teenagers? We never know.
Right. I mean, it's that definitely is a good question right there.
Yeah, but yeah, no, the art though, some of the especially the background art is just mind-boggling. Has that Eisner kind of feel to it, where everything is like just perfectly
In
detailed,
place.
that we know what it is. Like nothing is just half sketched. It's fully sketched. We got like side windows or little rooms, and I just love it. And just everything just looks so detailed. It looks amazing.
And like I said, it felt like it was modern day, but again, a little bit more into the future. And that's,
Hmm.
I mean, it made me feel comfortable, but then kind of that sci-fi yes
Yeah,
afterwards.
definitely. Yeah. And then we'll move on to the next book. And I'm sad Manny's not here because I think he would have just salivated over this one. He would be reading the absolute pants off it. And I mean, this is a history piece. This is set in a time where, there was still colonialism, especially in Europe, especially in the Balkan regions. The Ottoman Empire was still a huge empire at the time that covered parts of Southeast Europe as well as the Middle East. And this book is called The Fortune of the Winczlavs. Um, quite interesting because it is a history piece. It's set in a small country of Montenegro. I think Montenegro is now a separate state. It was part of Serbia for a little bit. A country that's kind of gone through a lot of changes. Now it's been absolute independence. And this is about a gentleman, Dr. Winczlav, who's a doctor in Montenegro, kind of stands up to the Ottoman Empire, which are the Turks, or Turkish Empire as it was known then as the Ottoman Empire. I don't know. I thought this was I wish I could sit there and just read this whole piece. But by golly, what I read, it's actually amazing. And Rabbit, what did you think of the Fortune of the Winczlavs?
I think it definitely had its good and its bad. The funny thing about it is, especially with all that talk of the Roe versus Wade thing, this was definitely a dramatic book, and it went into a whole I guess spiel or reasoning why he would want to or not want to jump into abortion and all that kind of stuff, and it
Yeah.
heavily carried onto that. So this book definitely is dramatic, and I don't know if it went too far into that, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely had its great points, especially whenever he was meeting uh the woman later on,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole whenever he got brought into the country, and the way that he brought the one woman with him into the country, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he had to marry her to get her in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is when he moves to the US, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he has to marry a Belgian, Bulgarian refugee by the name of Veska. Yeah, like, yeah, that's kind of tough, right? It's like and I don't know if, like, we heard about the story of the cannot remember what the book's name was, but the Ukrainian the man who stood up to the Russian Empire of the time, and like this, like for Dr. Winczlavs to leave Montenegro, I don't really see that as being a strong move. But then again, I haven't read the whole story, so I don't know if he
Right.
actually comes back to Montenegro as a reformed individual to fight and try to create freedom to his country. But we actually don't know all of that just yet, or is that his overall intention? We'll never know, right? Unless we
Right.
actually sit down and read it. Um, yeah, but the art though cannot fault the art. The art is absolutely amazing. And some of the detail in the characters look great, and the action sequence looked really good as well. Kind of wish though, Rabbit, we saw this as a TV series as well,
Yeah.
especially if it is what I think it is.
Yeah, and I love the action sequences in it. It really kind of carried you through to some of the other plot points that were more dramatic, and they were
Hmm.
really well done.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you can see that some of the signage are in a foreign language, which is great. It kind of gives it that you know authenticity. I just love that. Like, this is actually a really, like, yeah. Again, like, from what I read, I enjoyed it. I just wish I could read more, but it definitely looks amazing. And yeah, some more scenery here. Yeah, again, the art is just flawless. And then we're going to move on to the final book. And this book is a little bit more popular because there was a movie released a few years ago, directed by French director Luc Besson. And this is Valerian. And I'm going to be showing you guys something because, to me, from what I've seen in the book so far, this is Star Wars before Star Wars. So, Valerian was scripted by Pierre, Christin, with artwork by Jean-Claude Mezieres. And in this book, there are some images that are just going to blow your mind. So here we see an image from the movie that came out. Have you seen the movie Rabbit?
No, I haven't, but I saw this image and I was definitely interested.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, if you're a fan of the Fifth Element, that's probably your calling card because that is a Luc Besson movie, and he really carried that sci-fi kind of like I don't know, it wouldn't like it's like sci-fi with steampunk.
Right.
It just felt like it was out there, but not too far out there. It was kind of grounded, but I loved the Fifth Element. Did
Yeah,
you like
definitely.
it? Yeah.
Definitely. It was a beautiful, beautiful mesh of things, and it was like an interesting take on that sci-fi, like you said, a little bit more of the steampunk added in, where it kind of gave you something that was new and different, as opposed to just something that was lasers and pistols and armor kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. So I hope I'm actually wanting to watch this now.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean we see this image here, and it just was
Wow.
like I want that on a poster on my wall.
Right. It's just
Isn't that
beautiful.
it? Yeah, and we see this, and it just blew my mind. And there's more that's gonna blow your mind as well. Blew my mind, I gotta say. And then we see some images from inside Valerian that kind of cross-hatched into Star Wars. We see the Millennium Falcon taking off, and we see the little ship there from Valerian. Then we see Slave Leia. We've seen a woman in Valeria wearing similar clothing. We see like Han Solo and the Carbonite. We see something similar. The masking of the villain. We see Darth Vader unmasking. Like, isn't that crazy?
It is. It's just whenever I saw these pictures side by side, I was amazed.
Yeah, and I'm sure like any Star Wars fan watching would feel the same way. So again, jumping to the book. So this book started in the late 1960s. 1967, we have Bad Dream, which is the first story in this book. And you see some scenes here, it kind of reminds you of the coronation, of Leia with and we see, Leia sitting on the throne, whereas well, not on the throne, but she's sitting on a podium, and we see Luke, Han, and Chewie walking towards and getting their medals. Although I believe Chewie should have got a medal 110%.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but you see that, and that's the first thing I saw when I saw this image. So, and the feel that I got from the beginning of the book, it had the bit of that Prince Valiant feel to it as well, where you had like the knighted armor. It wasn't like you mentioned before, Rabbit, with the lasers and pistols and stormtrooper type armor. This looked more like Roman-esque armor, which I think was still pretty damn cool. And the illustration style of Mezieres is kind of very cartoonish in the faces, but the background looked absolutely divine. And the coloring is spot on as well. Like, and we talk about wordy. I mean, look at the first
Yeah.
page. But if it's telling the story and creating a foundation of a universe, it does need to be wordy. So sometimes you see this and it just scares you off. But if you sit down and read it, it does make total sense and does create the foundation of the universe that it's building. But overall, Rabbit, what did you think of Valerian?
Well, again, you did say it is a little wordy. That's definitely what you want to let people know going into it. The art was beautiful, popped off the pages. The story was well laid out. It did take a while to get through, but it was a strong, strong story that kept it flowing and kept the story moving, not just with the paneling and the pages and the graphics, but the way they were talking and the dialogue just
Mhm.
led you and pulled you into the story so you knew what was going on. So I thought it was really good. I mean, it was a little bit harder for me to read, but it definitely kept me intrigued.
Yes, and I think this is not a typical comic book. This is more of a graphic novel.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are looking for something small, this would be like something you just sit there and just spend maybe a week
Yeah.
going into daily, just to get your your taste. Uh, but I think if you are someone who's looking for something different but meaningful, what I mean by meaningful is like you got those comics that you should read as being a fan that you'd have. For example, we picked up Will Eisner's books and we feel better from reading it, right, Rabbit? You
Right,
know what I mean?
definitely.
Like we feel better from reading those books. This is the kind of book that you should read as being a fan, just so that you can say that you've accomplished the title that it's probably in the top 100 you should read before you die. It's one of those type of books. And I think Valerian is up there. And I think, by reading it, you can understand the history. And I'd love to actually know if you've read it and if you've seen the movie and tell us what you think, because I hope when I watch the movie that it does touch on the story. The only thing is, Rabbit, one thing I don't like about some movies is that they take little bite-sized chunks out of different books and consolidate them into one movie. Unlike Lord of the Rings, which is primarily one movie as one book. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think this one has a lot of elements into it. I don't know if they could put it all in there. And you would definitely have to pull some stuff out and focus more on a little bit of other stuff. And
Yeah.
I kind of see this hard to pull panel by panel kind of thing. I mean, there's been one or two movies that have done that worked well, but there's not been that many that have translated a comic straight across.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I totally agree with you on that. But I was just jumping back to this page here. I talked about, the Prince Valiant feel. You kind of see it here evidently. I just wonder how they got horses on this different planet. It'd be pretty cool if they had like a horse with like a Star Wars horse, a little bit different, right? Like a different species of animal. But I don't know. I think this is kind of cool. It's kind of like not quite at the stage yet of making everything alien-like. But again, this book was made in 1967, so hard to believe.
That definitely kind of blew my mind whenever I heard that, because whenever I sat down and read it, I definitely thought it was a not newer, but I would say 90s or something. And then whenever I heard it was 60s, I was like, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Imagine what the science fiction mindset was like back then. I mean, it's pretty damn cool. I gotta say, it's pretty cool. And for those of you watching, and Valerian is the name of the titular character, and his girlfriend's name is Laureen, I think. Laureen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this is pretty cool. So this book here is actually translated into English. It's the combination of Bad Dreams, The City of Shifting Waters, and The Empire of a Thousand Planets. So this is all consolidated into one book. I think it's like 167 pages. 167 pages of goodness right here, collected into a hardcover, brought to you by Cinebook. I think, again, this is like a book you should just read, especially if you're like looking for inspiration and just looking for something different to get your head around. This will be the ideal book, and I can't wait till I sit down and actually read the whole thing, because I think it will be a bit of a slow burner, but the end result is what you're after, and just looking for a really, really top-notch story.
Yeah, and it definitely was unique, and like you said, it's something a little bit different, something a little bit that would take your mind out of the real world, kind of just draw you into something new. It really was a little bit more of that expanding mind kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's amazing to get a different element or a different feel of science fiction, because again, this was made in the 60s, and I guess the mindset, we don't want cookie cutter of Star Wars and Star Trek all the time. We want something completely original. And I think this is what you get here. And some of you might read this and think, oh, this is a ripoff of Star Wars. And go, hang on a minute. Go back to the first few pages, because that's not the case. And there's also a little interview piece with Luc Besson and how much research he put into making the movie. So, it's great that we have, a French-speaking creator, and then we got the French director. I think it's absolutely amazing. But we did hear about your favorites. So we want to hear it again, Rabbit, but tell us your favorites and why.
Well, the sci-fi one, it was a Akkad.
Akkad.
Akkad. That was definitely my favorite. And again, like you had said, it does seem like it would work well with as a movie or a TV show a little bit better than a comic book. But to
Hmm.
me, the fact that it was laid out so well and that it was put into the place where it just dropped you in and you felt like you were a little bit lost at the first page or two, but it
Hmm.
just brings you up to date and then it gives you that modern feel but with that sci-fi kind of thrown at you afterwards. So that was my favorite because of those reasons. Of course, the uh the Egyptian one,
Papyrus.
Papyrus, was really my second favorite because of the character development. We had talked
Hmm.
about how they interacted with each other, and if you read it from the point we started and to the point that we stopped, there was so much character development, not just with those two characters, but a few others as well that are just key elements to any writing, and it's just beautifully done.
Yeah. And then that's some of the challenges that we have with these books is the fact that these are direct translations from other languages. So having Cinebook actually do that for us is incredible because a lot of work, a lot of time would have been spent in translating this because sometimes you cannot translate word by word because it just doesn't make any sense. So to actually retell this story the way it's been retold is, a testament to what Cinebook does for us and what it does for the overall community. Because if it weren't for these publishing companies, we would never have these translated. Uh, but for me, I think Valerian was like the book that I'd love to be able to dive in and read
Yeah.
further, and I think that one could have been easily my favorite because I like a bit of, like I like a bit of storytelling where it involves a character who starts from a nobody and becomes a somebody, and that's what I kind of feel with Valerian. My second favorite was Papyrus as well because I just loved it. I just loved reading it. It was fun. It was and it was very smart as a kid's book, or
Yeah.
it looks like a kid's book. Kind of felt like a kid's book, but just a little bit smarter. And thankfully, like not a whole lot of murder or cussing. I mean, there was one scene of murder placed, but if you were to like just basically just maybe blank out that page or put something else there that implied that someone was killed, it would have been all right. But
Yeah.
overall, I think it was a very solid book, and the other books were pretty solid as well. I think Winczlavs would have been one that I'd love to just be able to read to the finish. Um, but overall, I've got to put take my hat off to Cinebook to give us these European books that we probably wouldn't be able to get anywhere else.
And having said that, I would tell anyone to go look at their website because they do have so many titles to choose from. Like I said, there was one or two that really piqued my interest as well. So take
Hmm.
a gander at that website.
Yeah, definitely, and especially if you're a fan of a particular genre and looking for a different avenue, great opportunity. There's westerns, there's science fiction, as we already know. There are like funny books as well. So if you're looking for something that gonna tickle the rib cage, you got something there for you. So definitely check it out. And it's also a way of you never know, you might find something that could be eventually your favorite book, unless you check it out, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun today talking about a different publisher. Um, bit short because unfortunately Manny's not here, but we miss you, Manny. I look forward to having you back on soon, most def. Um, but please click like and subscribe to get more from Comic Crusaders. Check us out at Sunder Katz on Twitter, so you can check us out there. Also, just any publishers that you've heard of that you'd like us to check out, also leave a comment below. Would really appreciate that. It helps out the channel. If you can click like and subscribe, then we can get we'll get more more books out there and talk more about indie publishers. Any final words, Rabbit?
All I want to say is make sure you're checking out indie comics because there's definitely hidden gems everywhere out there. Some of these websites are great to look through and just browse. If you don't know what you're looking for, you can definitely find hundreds of stuff out there. This the uh this publisher really was great. Like I said, they were a little bit longer, but again, sometimes you want something that's going to fulfill your week instead of just a day, and this is definitely it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Rabbit. Thanks everyone for watching. Remember, click like and subscribe, really helps out our channel. Until then, see you all next time.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this Comic Crusaders production. For real-time news on all things pop culture, please feel free to follow us on social media. For articles, original content, merchandise, and more, please go to www.comiccrusaders.shop. Also follow along with all of the websites in the Comic Crusaders family. As always, if you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel.